Greetings. Well, it's happened again. This week we had a gentleman named George Floyd who was killed by police in Minnesota. Might as well just call it as it is. I saw the video. A lot of times I try not to watch these videos because I hate having those images in my mind. But I saw this video. They killed him. And, you know, it just keeps happening. We had that. We had a woman in New York City who called the police saying a black man was threatening her when all he did was ask her to put her dog on a leash. And luckily someone else saw that and called her out for it. And she ended up losing her job. And, you know, we have a lot of people end up losing their jobs for doing stupid stuff as it regards racism or whatever. But no one seems to learn the lesson. And it comes from the top in this country. I'm just going to call it out. Exactly what it is. When you've got someone who's leading the country, not for me, but leading the country for whatever reason, and he's not ashamed to be shown shaking the hands of white supremacists and people who have shared white supremacist views, you just got no chance. You really don't have a chance. Last year, I did a video, and what I basically said is, minorities can't do it alone. You know what? We need white people in this country to step forward and help us out. Some do, but not enough, not nearly enough. You gotta face the fact, the power structure is not with minorities in this country. It just isn't. Now, there's gonna be people who are going to say, well, geez, you got one guy who's a cabinet member or whatever. It's like, wow, one guy, huh? Well, you got basketball players. Oh, come on. It's the stupidest argument I've ever heard. More NBA basketball players are black. More football players are black. Please. That's athletics. Don't try to get me in music. Don't try to get me in entertainment. Get me into the workforce. Tell me how many minority CEOs there are of Fortune 500 companies. Tell me how many minorities there are in leadership positions where you work. Y'all know the truth. Unless you happen to live in a predominantly black city, you got nothing. And when I have worked in a predominantly black city, they had almost no black directors. I'm calling it out. I know what I saw. So, I thought I would help. I decided I was going to come up with some things that white folks in America can help minorities with to help us get some kind of justice, to help us get at least an opportunity not to get killed, or an opportunity to get promoted, opportunities to grow, opportunities to help whatever community they happen to live in. Because I could say, you know, help the community, but, you know, I live in a predominantly white community. They don't need my help. You know, that's just how that is. So I said, you know, maybe they just don't know how to help. That's what I'm here to do today. So I got 7 of these. Let's get started. And by the way, there's going to be stories to some of them, just so you know. So the first one, don't dismiss a minority person when they complain about racism. Years ago, when I was still a director of a hospital, they decided to bring this guy in to teach leadership. And from the start, he and I didn't get along. We just didn't. Now, out of all the classes, it was me and one other black person, and everyone else was white. And the other black person happened to be a nurse, and she decided she wasn't going to say a word. That's not my style. So I said things, and he didn't like it. And we had 10 classes of this guy. And in the 9th class, he actually threw me out. And I kept telling everybody. I told the CEO, I told the guy I reported to, I told other directors, this guy's got something permanently against me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I defended some of my coworkers the very first week, but he's out for me. He hasn't said anything like this to anybody else. It's all me. And I think he's racist. And he said, no, it can't be that. So you get to number 9, he throws me out 15 minutes in. I'm happy to go. I leave. I go to one of my other hospitals, and I mentioned the guy threw me out of class. And he said, well, something must have happened. I said, yeah, the guy's racist. Turns out after I left, he decided he was the big man, and he said to the class, so how do you like how I handled him? And they let into him because they had heard me complaining about it for all these weeks, and they had seen what had been going on. And so they didn't dismiss me. Now, they also didn't say, when I was saying I thought it was racism, they didn't seem like they were on my side. It was almost like they weren't sure what to do. But once he threw me out, they came to my defense. Thank you, people. However, upper management didn't. So what ended up happening is he called the CEO and he started trying to apologize, and the CEO told him, you need to talk to Mitch. And he kept calling, and I wouldn't take his call for like 3 hours. And then the guy I reported to says, you know, talk to the guy. Okay, fine. And then we had our talk. But you just can't go around dismissing it if it doesn't happen to you, because it's not going to happen to you. It's just not going to happen to you. Now, if you happen to live in kind of a depressed neighborhood and you have someone coming in, then maybe it could happen to you, but it's going to be happening to a lot more people. It's not going to be happening to just one person. So there's that one. Number 2, don't find reasons that something might not be racist when it's pointed out to you. Number 2 and number 3 are actually going to end up being combined. And this was a friend of mine, and I'm not calling her out for this because she didn't grow up like I did. She didn't live in a community kind of like I did. And it sounds weird for me to say that because I was a military kid where we didn't have any of that on the base back then. It may happen now, but back then we didn't have any of that. And so, you know, it was just something she was totally not used to seeing where she lived. And I knew that because where I worked happened to be in the community she lived in. So anyway, we're consulting out of town. And I would go to a few places. We would go out to dinner with a couple other people, and I would point things out. And she just couldn't say it. Oh, it has to be this. It has to be this. Whatever. I said, you know, and I'm not going to say her name. And I said, how are you missing this? It's so blatant. Come on. You don't notice this thing? And she never noticed it. And she would always find different reasons for it. And I got to tell you, I was irked. Like, my goodness. How do you not believe me? You've known me for a good long time. I know I didn't say it in, you know, where we lived or where we were working, but you had to have seen this. But she just couldn't see it. Then, number 3, when you see racism happening, say something. She and I went to dinner, just us two, and she saw it early. Why? Because I pointed it out. We go into this Italian restaurant, and there's this guy who's, you know, going to sit us. He never looks at me. He looks at her. He never looks at me. We sit down at a table, because I'm with her. He hands her the menu. He puts my menu on the table. He asks her if she wants anything to drink, and he walks away. Never asked me. Nothing. I said, did you see that? She says, yes, that I saw. I said, okay, keep your eyes open. So a couple of other things happened in there. And one of those things was, turned out the owner of the restaurant went around to every single table except ours. Tried to dodge our table. And I said, did you see that? And she said, yes. So he was getting close to the table and says, oh, sir, excuse me. And she makes him come over to the table. So now she's talking to him about the thing. And he's just looking at her and he's doing whatever. And she says, oh, and this is my friend Mitch. First time he looks at me. Oh, hi. Oh, hi? I'm kind of hard to miss, you know. I mean, I may have shrunk an inch over the last few years, which I hate. But, you know, I'm not a small guy. This is the first time you saw me. I'm kind of hard to miss. But she said something about it. Now, she didn't necessarily call him out for racism, but she made a point of making this guy see me. And from that point on, she never questioned me again, because then she started seeing things. Sometimes, you know, you just have to have that moment where you see something and you recognize it for what it is. And if you see it, you got to say something, or you got to do something. That's the third one. Number 4, look for ways to help minorities get the training they need to be promoted. I talked about this in that other video that I shared before when I talked about, you know, minorities need help. But I have been to a lot of different facilities in the country, and I have seen where either they have a lot of minority employees but none in leadership, or they're in a community where there's enough minorities where they should have some employees there and they have none. I actually had to deal with that a couple of times, and I would go to HR. I went to HR in 2 different hospitals when I was a regular employee. I said, you know, y'all got to get some other folks in here. At one of the hospitals, I was the only minority working in the entire hospital, and it was in a military community. And the guy says, well, we don't have any apply. I said, go out and recruit them. He says, well, that's not my job. I said, yes, it is. It's definitely your job. I'm sorry. You get federal funds. You're supposed to be an equal opportunity employer. You can't call yourself an equal opportunity employer if you got no equal opportunity to deal with. Wouldn't do it. And the other community, the guy said, well, it's not anything I can do. I said, well, yes, it is. You need to kind of recruit. And he says, well, that's not my job. I said, yes, it is. But in that particular instance, because I had to deal with that other mess previously, there were other black people who worked in the hospital, in housekeeping, in the cafeteria. I think we had one who used to be a ward clerk, and once she was gone, there was nobody else. I mean, at this particular hospital, my first 3 weeks, people in the community were coming to the hospital just to see me. I know that because they would walk in the hospital in groups sometimes. It's the funniest thing. And they would go and they would do this kind of thing and look, because they just had never seen anything like me, which is really strange. And I don't mean just white people, you know, people of color. They had a high, well, okay, that high is a misnomer, but they had a significant black community. They had a significant Hispanic community, because a lot of migrants used to come and then they would stay, which is an interesting psychology. I may have to think about that one of these days. But they would just come in just to look at me. People don't usually voluntarily go to hospitals, but in this particular instance, for 2 or 3 weeks, they did. So if you look for ways to try to help people get promoted, I'm not saying that you take them over anybody else. Matter of fact, you should probably be doing the same kind of thing for all your employees, because I did. You give people opportunities to show that they have leadership material, then you mentor them, and you find ways to give them the skills that they need, so that if something comes up where they can become eligible for a leadership position, they at least have a shot at it. That's just what you have to do. I did this seminar a bunch of years ago for Upstate University here in the Syracuse area on, oh my goodness, I forgot what it's called, but it was like helping people to have other opportunities. And succession planning, that was it. Succession planning. And it went off really well. Matter of fact, I'll probably link to the article, because I did a 4-part article based off of that presentation. And I'll probably link to at least a couple of them, so you can see that this is just something that you should be doing. And it wasn't just minorities, it was women as well, because women are the majority in this country, but they certainly ain't treated like that. Number 5, don't try to turn minorities white. People hate hearing this, but I say this all the time. Look here, their name may not be John or Barry or Bob. They may have different kind of hairstyles than you're used to. They may dress a little, well, for no other word, I'll say cooler. I've never been a cool dresser. It's just never been my style. You know, like I said, I was a military kid. My mother used to buy clothes that I'd have never thought of buying, because mom was more into fashion than I was. Even now. Okay, maybe not now, but, you know, 10 years ago, mom knew how to buy styles that I'd have had no clue on. But you can't say, well, you've got to act a certain way, and you've got to dress a certain way. In certain jobs, yes. You know what? If you're going to be a criminal lawyer, yes, you need to dress like a criminal lawyer. But if you're not, you don't necessarily have to overdo it. Now, I think that there should be some rules of decorum if you want to be a leader. I definitely will say that. I will always say that. I mentioned that in another video where I told a guy, dude, you got to stop playing. You've got to put forth you need to look better. You just need to. You need to act better. You need to dress just a little better. And, you know, these people are coming to you anyway, asking you for help and advice. You know this stuff. But they're not going to hire you for a leadership position. Someone else will. You need to make them see what you really are. That happens. But to try to change someone else to be white, tell them, well, if you straightened your hair or if you did this or whatever, please, don't do that. And I'm tired of hearing these people or reading where these people are saying stuff about, well, how come black people got to do these things with their hair, and how come they got to do this, whatever, whatever. You know what? Just stop. Yes, you know what? I have some complaints also, but it's not necessarily because they're black, it's because they're young. Because I say the same thing about young white kids. Why are they dressing like that? I don't get it. But back in my day, when I was a kid, We had those Converse sneakers, and we all bought high tops, and we bought long laces so that you could wrap them around your ankle as many times as possible. That was what we thought was cool. Kids can be stupid. Anyway, there's number 5. Number 6, ask yourself this question. Would this kind of thing happen to me? Some years ago, we had a 12-year-old kid named Tamir Rice who was killed by police in Cincinnati, 12 years old, because they thought he pulled a gun. He pulled a toy. It looked exactly like a toy. The cop said, well, I thought it was a gun. He's 12 years old. He's in a playground. And you thought he pulled a gun, and it was colorful. It didn't even look anything like a gun. So he killed a 12-year-old. Yet, some years after that, you got a guy named Dylan Roof who goes into a church in South Carolina, kills, I think it was 9 black people. I don't know how many he injured, but he killed them. He shot them up. And they catch him the next day. They didn't go in with guns. They knew he had a gun. He was, armed and dangerous. And they bring him in alive and safe and not beaten up. I'm just saying, ask yourself this question. If you're white, how would the police treat me in the same situation? The thing that happened to George Floyd the other day. If you were white, do you really think that you'd have 4 cops there and one would have his knee on your neck and you would say, I can't breathe, and he would continue pushing your neck into the ground even after you stop breathing and stop moving? No, ain't gonna happen. I'm not gonna say that it's 100% it's not gonna happen, but it's not gonna happen like that. And believe you me, if there were people there who were filming it and they saw it and you were white, the cop would immediately stop because they don't want to be seen killing a white person the way that they don't care killing a black person. And by the way, just to throw this out there, because this is not only against white people, the person who was standing in front trying to block it happening happened to be a Chinese American, but he was a cop. Just thought I'd point that out. Others have kind of pointed out, but no one has really said it, so I'm saying it. Number 7, when you see articles or videos of bad behavior against minority, share that stuff. It's not just good enough for you to read it and get indignant. Share that stuff. Comment on that stuff. Comment to the person who wrote it. Say something. Comment to some of your friends who probably are going to say, well, maybe they did this or whatever. No. We need the support. I am against riots. There's rioting going on in Minnesota. I am really against riots. I'm not against protests. Protesting is one thing. Rioting means you picked up some rocks, you picked up some stones, and you've gone out and you're trying to hurt folks. That I don't really want to see. But protesting? Yeah. But you don't have to actually leave your house and go somewhere and protest. There are other ways to protest. Like I said, share that stuff. If you want to, share this video. I'm going to promote it. Share any of my other videos. Share articles that I may put up on diversity issues. I talk about women too, and how women need to be treated better. I bet some of those get shared. I'm just saying. I see the numbers. These videos don't necessarily do all that well, but they need to be said. I'm going to be the one who says them. Other folks are going to say them. You're not going to get rid of us, but we need help. And that's what this is all about. Anyway, that's 7 ways that you in the white community can help minorities. Let me know your thoughts. My name is Mitch Mitchell. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I hope we can count on you someday. Y'all take care.